Boys, I don't know why we have so many people just glazing UFC 309. Granted, I have seen here and there people actually speaking out of how terrible this card is, but for the most part, I swear, I see so many YouTube videos saying why UFC 309 is underrated or UFC 309 is underrated. Some bullshit like that. UFC 309 might possibly be the worst pay-per-view we've got this year, which is crazy because typically for the Madison Square Garden fights, it's typically one of the better UFC pay-per-views of the year. But like I said, this has to be up there with one of the worst pay-per-views we got this year. And I'm not just gonna say that. I'm gonna show you guys every single pay-per-view we had this year. Go by them one by one, and we're gonna finally decide, is this card just absolute garbage and deserves to be the number one spot in the worst card of this year, or am I being a little bit too harsh? But let's just look at the card real quick. We're only doing the main card for every single pay-per-view. We're not looking at prelims. We're not looking at any of that stuff. Just main card. The opener of UFC 309. We have old man Chris Weidman taking on Eric Anders. The fact that is a pay-per-view level card in Madison Square Garden, yes, I'm going to give it a little bit of a leadway just because maybe we're going to see the retirement of a legend in Chris Weidman. Maybe we're doing something like that. But if we're not, and we're just feeding him Eric Anders just because, is this really a UFC pay-per-view main card level fight? Absolutely not. I don't know anyone who's going to buy the pay-per-view and be like, yeah, because Chris Weidman's on this card, it swung my vote to buy this pay-per-view. I don't know what Chris Weidman adds to this card other than just being like a legend in himself. And maybe the UFC are trying to give him one of the bigger stages of the year, Madison Square Garden. Maybe that's what's going on, but such a garbage ass fight for a pay-per-view. Going down after that, we have Bo Nickel. I mean, okay, this is all right to have in a pay-per-view against Paul Craig. This is actually going to be a very good test for Bo Nickel. A lot of people think Bo Nickel is going to run through this guy. Paul Craig has a chance here, but a good test for Bo Nickel. I could see people being like, yeah, the reason Bo Nickel's on this card is the reason why I'm going to buy this pay-per-view. I could 100% see that, but it's okay having Bo Nickel here. I'm not mad about that. Then, honestly, the last ones after this, the opener and this middle one, the featured fight, pissed me off. I honestly need to know, does anyone know these girls? Like, why are they the featured fight in this main card at UFC 309? Can anyone answer me this? Like, I don't understand why Viviane and Karine are on UFC 309 in the main card. I have no idea. Like, am I missing something? Did they have a crazy highlight reel? No, I don't think Viviane has fought this year. She hasn't. The last time she fought was back in UFC 285. So why is she on UFC 309, the main card? Makes no sense. Silva, on the other hand, yeah, she fought one time this year at UFC Fight Night in April, but other than that, she's fought only twice last year, once on 292 and then another one, Kai Kara France versus the Fight Night. But can someone please explain, why is she on the UFC 309, one of the biggest fight cards of the year? Why is she on the main card? Going down, Chandler versus Oliveira. The craziest part is, once this fight was announced, there was hardly any hype for this card. And then, of course, this fight, does anyone care about this fight? John Jones versus Stipe? I think the only thing that a lot of people are caring about is it's finally going to be over and we can keep moving on with the heavyweight division. I think people are going to be excited for this fight to finally happen more than actually watching, if that makes sense. But let's go through every single pay-per-view this year and just see, is 309 better or worse? We'll run through them real quick just so you guys remember. 297, we had Strickland versus DDP, then Co-Main, Raquel Pennington, Mario Bueno Silva, Neil Magny, Mike Malott, Chris Curtis, Marc-Andre Barriou, Alan Mozart Evloev. Then 299, we had Volkanovski versus Topuria, Whitaker versus Costa, Jeff Neal versus Ian Gary, Marav versus Henry Cejudo, Hernandez versus Kopilov. This was a stacked, honestly, from this point on, stacked cards. 299. O'Malley versus Vera 2, Dustin Poirier, Benoit Saint Denis, Kevin Holland, MVP, Gilbert Burns, Jack Della Maddalena, Peter Yan, Song Yadong. 300, another, like, do we need to go through 300? Probably the best card of the year. Pereira versus Jamal Hill, Wei Li versus Janan, Justin Gaethje, Max Holloway, Charles Oliveira, Arman Sarukian, and then Bo Nickel, Cody Brundage. 301, this is where we kind of see some shit-ass cards. Pantoja versus Steve Ercik, Aldo versus Martinez, Smith versus Petrino, Michel Pereira versus Ior Poteria, Paul Craig, Borjalio. 302, Makhachev versus Poirier. This card, honestly, looking back at it, wasn't that great. We had Strickland versus Costa, boring fight. Kevin Holland versus Michel. I mean, that was an all-right fight. Broke that dude's arm, so it's okay. Battle of the Unks here. Nico Price versus Alex Moreno. Then, I like this Randy Brown versus Dos Santos. Moving down, 303. Pereira versus Parashka. 2. Dan Ige versus Diego Lopez. Smith versus Roman Dolidze. Mario Bueno Silva versus Macy Kassan. And then Ian Gary versus MVP. 304. Edwards versus Muhammad 2. Then we had Tom Aspinall versus Curtis Blades 2. Bobby Green, Paddy Pimblett. CLD versus Gregory Rodriguez. And then Arnold Allen versus Giga. 305. We had DDP versus Izzy. Kai Car-France, Steve Ercik. Matus Gamrot, Dan Hooker. Tai Tuivasa, Jairzinho Rosenstrike. And then The Leech versus Prades. RIP, my boy, The Leech. 306. This is also like this is an okay card. You know, O'Malley versus Merab. Grasso versus Valentina. Brian Ortega, Diego Lopez. Zell Huber versus Ribovic. And then Rodriguez, Ode Osborne. 307. Pereira versus Khalil Roundtree. Raquel Pennington, Julia Pena. Jose Aldo, Mario Batista. Roman Dolidze, Kevin Holland. Ketlin Vieira, Kayla Harrison. 308 now. Taporia Holloway, Whitaker Chimaev versus Radchik, Lerone Murphy, Dan Ige, Shara Bullet, Armin Petrosian. I picked out a few of these fight cards, a few of these pay-per-views that I think are just the worst out of these. First off, I have UFC 298. I only have this shit here because my boy Volkanovski got knocked out, but realistically, Whitaker, Paulo Costa, Jeff Neal, Ian Gary, Merab, Henry Cejudo, Hernandez, Kapilov. This was a stacked card, so no. This one is not worse than 308. 308 is still the worst. Let's do the Makhachev one next. So Makhachev, Poirier. Then we have Strickland versus Costa, Kevin Holland, Michelle, Nico Price, Alex Morono, Randy Brown versus Dos Santos. Honestly, pretty close to how bad UFC 309 is, but I still think 309 is miles worse than UFC 302. I think out of all of these, maybe the opener is like on par with 308, 309, but like the Nico Price one and the women fight, they're practically on par. But the rest I think are slightly better than 309. 309 is so ass, it's crazy. I think it boils down between 301 and 297. I think it boils down between those two. So let's do 301 first. The opener, I think the opener is better. Paul Craig, Borjalio, I think that's better. Michel Pereira versus Ihor, I think that's better. You know, Smith versus Petrino, about the same. Jose Aldo versus Martinez. I mean, I'll give it to Chandler and Oliveira, but I think the main event was better, to be honest. It's just like nobody cares about 3-0. It's just no one cares about John Jones and Stipe. And if you do, you're just lying to yourself. So I think it boils down to 297. Is 297 better or worse than 309? Let's go through. The opener, I think Allen versus Mozart is better. Chris Curtis versus Marc-Andre Barry. Honestly, I would say it might be on par. I'll put it on par with Bo Nickel. Then we have Vivian. I think Neil Magnia and Mike Malott better than the girl fight. But then we have Raquel Pennington. I'm giving that to Charles. And then we have Strickland DDP. Is that a better fight than John Jones Steep? I don't know. The lead up was crazy. And we have like barely any lead up to this fight because this fight's next weekend. I might have to give it to Strickland, to be honest. So I think 309 might be the worst card this year, which is crazy because like I said previously, the Madison Square Garden fights are usually one of the best fight cards of the year and massively fumbled the bag. You know, I don't really know what to say. You guys have to let me know. Am I tripping on this? Is this a valid crash out moment? Or do you guys agree with me? Because to be honest, 309 is looking so ass. Maybe hindsight, it'll be a really fun card. Maybe, who knows, we'll see freaking Stipe starch John Jones out cold. That would be fun. But I don't know. I really don't know, to be honest. Like, am I excited for 309? Not really, which is depressing to say. But it is what it is. Let me know in the comments below. Am I crashing out? Is this valid? Let me know what you guys think about UFC 309. Who do you guys got in that main event? Are you even excited for this shit? And then quickly look at this, because 99% of you guys just watch this shit for free. Your boy has been grinding. I've been grinding so hard, I've crashed out at this moment. So help me get to 1,000 subscribers. Stop being gay about it. Help your boy out. With all that being said, there's really not that much else left to say, except for I will see you guys in my next video.